This video contains spoilers for Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Hello my fellow gaming enthusiasts, it is I, Onion Creature, and I'd say it's about time I talked about Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the latest Kirby video game. It's been a long time coming. This is the first 3D title in the series, releasing to coincide with the 30th anniversary of the series, and as such, it's quite special. So I basically recorded me talking about it for as long as I thought was necessary, which as it turned out was a pretty long time. So hope you're up for that, because that's what this video is. It's a lot of discussion on this exciting title. So buckle up my friends, and I hope you enjoy my review of Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Wow, it's finally time to discuss Kirby and the Forgotten Land, one of the biggest Kirby games to ever release, both in terms of importance and its actual length, its size and scope. So we'll jump into it then. The visuals are really stunning. I think possibly this is the best looking game in the series. For me, it would be close between this and Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, but that's also in part because I really just love that specific art style that Rainbow Curse goes for. But in terms of raw visuals, this is really impressive. The lighting looks amazing. The different types of environments look so incredible. And the art style of having the post-apocalyptic Earth-like environments, which are often overgrown, just looks really, really amazing. The colors look great. The biggest drawback, of course, would be the frame rate, which is set to 30 frames per second, which is, reasonably appropriate. It is, by the looks of it, a demanding game. Obviously, 60 would have been nice. The distant objects are displayed at a far lower frame rate than 30, and it's very noticeable in a lot of instances. The camera doesn't have to be that far away for you to notice the lower frame rate, so it's a shame that that is something that is in the final game. It's not terrible because everything else looks so great, just a shame about that frame rate. It does definitely feel more justified than in Star Allies, which was also 30 frames per second. I feel like they could have figured out some way to dial back the visuals in order to facilitate 60 frames per second, which had been the series standard up to that point, so it's a shame they didn't reach that for Star Allies. With a largely single-player focused 3D adventure, I think 30 does work and is effective enough. I also got to mention the opening to this game. I think they very wisely did not include it in the demo, and I'm glad they did because it's actually really special to experience that firsthand for the first time. It's amazing. I love the music and how it starts from the radio. It's like, dang man, I'm playing a real new Kirby game and it's 3D, and wow, it just hits you that this is a full-on game right here. That's the moment when you realize you're in for something quite special. The movement in general, I would say, is really satisfying and great, and some of the best movement in a Kirby game. It's been translated from 2D super well. The base moveset specifically just works extremely well. Your jump, float by tapping A, the inhale works really well. It's not too difficult to orient yourself in the correct direction to inhale enemies, and when spitting them out, the game does actually guide where you spit it out in order to make it more likely to hit an enemy that you were probably aiming at. It's really cool how the developers made it so that if you use a move that looks like it will hit an enemy, usually it will, even if it doesn't actually spatially make sense from the perspective of the projectile. There's a really cool video showcasing this. That's a really great idea, and it's really well implemented. One of the biggest additions to this game's combat is the dodge roll, which you will probably be using a lot in boss fights, specifically the later game boss fights, because they allow you to dodge out of harm's way and take no damage at all. And with several different abilities, you can also do a counter attack after you have done a perfect dodge. This actually helps with the game's balance in some of the more difficult boss fights. If you can figure out how to do the perfect dodge, it'll help with avoiding taking damage a lot, and that can be really helpful. And I didn't really personally find it to feel that overpowered. It seemed like a pretty natural addition. I didn't really expect something this major to be added to the core moveset, but it was nice to see. We're gonna talk about abilities now because there's actually quite a bit to discuss, this being the first proper 3D adventure, and the ability selection here is actually relatively low to a majority of modern Kirby titles, and those abilities are not quite as versatile as their 2D counterparts in general. I'm okay with that because the game does a lot of things to distract you from the fact that the raw number of abilities is lower than usual. How they do that is by having multiple different iterations of each copy ability that you can upgrade. So even though there's about 11 or 12 abilities total in the game, you do actually get quite a bit of variety with those different upgradable versions of abilities. Even though they all tend to have the same base moveset, they do offer visual variety. There's definitely some differences. I gotta talk about Mouthful Mode, which is a really genius addition to this game. It adds a lot of variety to the levels. Obviously, Car is the standout one, but the others are also very fun. I think the Mouthful Mode abilities are paced pretty well throughout the game. You unlock them at a reasonably good rate. You come across new ones somewhat frequently, and it does feel like, to me, the definitive version of the super abilities that we started seeing in Kirby's Return to Dreamland and that have continued in the main series since then with Hypernova and the Robobot suit and the friend abilities from Star Allies. Yeah, it just feels like the most well thought out version of this. I think it's interesting that this design decision influenced the aesthetic of the game because they came up with the idea to utilize real life objects as abilities, and as a result of that they came up with the idea of an abandoned city environment to facilitate the inclusion of those objects in the world. It's always fun to learn how the different game design elements influence the other aspects of the game. Another just minor feature that adds a lot to the game is the emotes. Since the D-pad is no longer used for movement, it has been allotted as a space in which Kirby can emote. You have 4 different emotes to use. You can do a wave, and you can sit, and you can look into the distance. It's really fun to go in the town and you can wave at the different Waddle Dees. Yeah, using those emotes to interact with different characters, that's a fun thing to do. Just walk around town, say hello to your neighbors. We're going to touch on the music here. Overall, I am super pleased. There's still definitely a part of me that wishes that there was more orchestrated elements. I just felt like this first 3D title would have been a great opportunity to introduce orchestration to the series. I think of some of the leaps that Mario has taken, specifically Mario Galaxy. It added so much to that to have the orchestrated music. Smash Bros. Brawl had the orchestrated track as the main theme. God, I love the 25th anniversary orchestrations they did. I think that is the definitive way for Kirby music to be heard. I would have preferred just a more orchestration. A lot of the music, it does have its own style, but it does sound like the kind of Kirby music that we've heard before. Granted, I'd say the consistency of the music is higher than we've had in even in Star Allies and other recent titles. There's like no track here that feels lesser, really. They're all like on the same level of quality, which is really good. It's just that I wish there was that orchestration there. And since the series is taking this leap into 3D, I think it would have felt really appropriate to also have that auditory leap. And it does feel like a higher budget title than some of the other Kirby games. It's had a longer development cycle than a lot of other modern releases in the series. It's a slight missed opportunity in my opinion, but I wouldn't say that the music that we do have is bad or lackluster in any way. It's just that specific thing would have been nice to have. We also got to talk about the lyrical track, which is the first lyrical track in a main series title. It's actually not in a decipherable language. I read that it's a made-up language. It's like diegetic music that starts playing on a radio, and that acts as the main theme of the game. It's awesome. Really love it, and it sounds amazing. And I think it does work to have the full version of that theme act as the credits music. I do tend to prefer credits to have their own specific music that you don't hear anywhere else in the game, but I think it does still work very well to have the full version of the main theme act as that. In this instance, this is the second lyrical track because Super Kirby Clash had a lyrical track that was in both English and Japanese, and now we just have a single lyrical track that is in a made-up language, which works really well. and feels appropriate. Another musical detail is that there is a minimal use of the Green Greens theme, which acts as the main theme for the Kirby series. That really works, and it makes it stand out more when it is used, which most notably is in Kirby's house. I think Green Greens was perhaps slightly overused in Star Allies, so I really don't mind it not being as prevalent in this title. Since this is an evolution of the series, I think it's totally fine to have those more traditional musical elements in the background as opposed to being in the forefront like they were in Star Allies. Forgotten Land has an amazing hub area, which has a surprising amount to do. I was definitely not expecting it to be as expansive as it is. It has some of the series' best sub-games. I really love the fishing game, the cafe mini-game, the tilt and tumble revival of sorts. I think those add a lot to the personality of the hub area, and they feel really well integrated into the environment. The hub area acts as a sort of really organic menu because you have the movie theater where you can watch cutscenes, and you have the arena as well as the Waddle Dee upgrade shop where you can upgrade your weapons. So it just feels like this really natural environment, but it has all the features that you would usually expect out of like a menu in a Kirby game. You know, starting back at, I guess, Kirby Superstar, you know, Return to Dreamland, Star Allies, Planet Robobot, Triple Deluxe, they all have that, you know, central menu which you use to access all the different types of content. But in Forgotten Land, it's all just in the hub area, which is great because I love hub areas so much. They're some of my favorite things in 3D games specifically. We all love Peach's Castle, Delfino Plaza, all that. So it's wonderful to have a Kirby version of that. And I guess we have had hub worlds before with the Kirby Clash games where it's a sort of RPG town, and this does feel kind of inspired by that in a lot of ways, in the way that the town is slowly built up by Waddle Dees. So that's a great incentive to collect the Waddle Dees that are strewn across the levels because they upgrade the town. I hope we get more hub worlds in the future because it's a standout element which is really effectively implemented. I really like how Meta Knight is used in the game. He only appears in the arena, the only place for his boss fight. It's fun that they gave him like a lore-related reason for being there as the protector of the town. I really love how the songs in the music player have the names of the songs listed when you play them. That's great. And I also love the colors which indicate which composer worked on which song, return from previous titles. You have red being Jun Ishikawa, blue being Hirokazu Ando, and so on. It's also super fun how you have to like donate money to the Waddle Dee band in order to unlock more music. The stage gets gradually upgraded when you do that. And it's fun that you can play any song you want in Waddle Dee Town. So you just go to the music player, start up a song you might want to listen to, and then while you're exploring Waddle Dee Town, that music will play, which is cool. That's really a fun detail. You could also just put it on autoplay and it'll just go through the whole soundtrack. I think this game does a really great job of accentuating how adorable the Waddle Dees are. They're really, really freaking cute in this game. I love their noises, the noises they make, they make fun noises. I like when they gather to unlock the boss levels. They make funny noises then too. Very good characters. Having them as NPCs is a lot of fun and works super, super well. It'll be weird to go back to them being enemies, presumably in future titles if they do that, since they're just so darn lovable here. Speaking of Waddle Dees, I love the detail of in the finale where King DDD sacrifices himself to throw one of his subjects. That was a good character moment to show DDD's compassion for his subjects. Even though he's a ruthless dictator, he still does care for his people. And that same Waddle Dee is serving him later when King DDD is chilling at the town. I was pretty surprised by how in-depth some of the mini-games got. Specifically, the fishing mini-game is actually quite fun. It takes like a decent amount of time to fully complete that and get the largest fish, which is a fun challenge. It's actually a little bit difficult to catch that final fish. You can try and get high scores on it as well, which is actually pretty fun. I did not expect to like the fishing game quite as much as I do. It's actually really, really cool. I also really liked Kirby Tilt and Roll, which is a sort of one of those ball puzzles that we know and love, but obviously the name alludes to the Kirby Tilt and Tumble game on the Game Boy Color. Motion controls are a little bit finicky, but they do work well enough, and I also really love that you unlock a harder difficulty, which is really really difficult actually, especially getting the ball to the goal in the allotted time to get that extra coin bonus was pretty tricky. I really loved that they had a full-fledged homage to Kirby Tilt and Tumble. I do hope that points to an expanded version, maybe released on the eShop. That would be really cool to have a motion-controlled ball game again. We've been missing those. I really like the cafe game too. You have to match the order to the customer's request. It's really freaking cute though, especially the sounds the Waddle Dees make when they gather for the lunch rush. It's really funny. And then if you like lose, they all just walk off sadly, and they look really depressed and forlorn. It's pretty funny. Yeah, that's a good game too. Pretty solid, enjoyable game. It's also co-op too. That's cool. It's pretty cool how this game has an interactive version of Kirby's house for about the first time as far as I'm aware. And this is one of the few places in the game where you get to hear green greens, which does feel very appropriate. It's an awesome detail how your wall gradually gets picture frames on it based on different tasks you've completed. Like if you've completed the mini games, you get a picture frame for that mini game, and then you get it for story progression, collecting all the Waddle Dees and all that kind of stuff. So that's just a really fun extra detail that doesn't need to be there but adds a lot of character to the experience. You can also rest here and regain health, and you get a variety of there's actually a surprising amount of different sleeping animations, which are really adorable. There's some other good details like how you can enter through the chimney on top of the house, and you can light the fire with the fire ability and get yourself get a roaring fire going. That's always a good time. The part of the game where you get information on previous titles is contained in a book that is in Kirby's house, and you just click on that and get information on the previous Kirby games, several of which are being delisted very soon, which is kind of funny. On the 3DS eShop specifically, a lot of those are 3DS titles that will no longer be available like a year from now, if not sooner. But yeah, they're in the game, and you can look at them while they are available, which is not going to be too much longer. Another cool detail is how you can display 3 different figurines of your choice on the mantle of the fireplace, which is just fun. It makes it just a tiny bit customizable, which is cool. It's really fun. It's not like an amazing amount of customization, but it's just a nice little touch that they have that. One thing that I was pretty pleased to be right about is that the one-ups are completely absent from this game. I mused about this, I think, when they released the first trailer. It did not look like they would be doing one-ups, and indeed they have not. And that's for good reason, because the coins are now used as a proper currency, which makes them so much more valuable. They were close to valueless in Kirby Star Allies. You kind of collect them for the visceral experience of it, because you really don't need lives in Star Allies. They are pretty unnecessary. You're gonna get up in the hundreds without trying that hard. So they just don't have lives in this, and you return from a previous point you died, which is basically what would have happened with lives, because you basically never get game overs in modern Kirby games. It's pretty difficult to do so. And the coins, you know, you have a variety of things they can be spent on, so they do feel properly valuable, and there's like an incentive to collect them. I went out of my way to collect them. During the main game, I think they were reasonably scarce. I mean, not scarce, but I did run out of them a couple times by spending money on the figurines and whatnot, and that was good because it makes them more valuable. That's good. It makes the levels more fun because you're collecting something that you can actually use. It just gives you an incentive to explore. It's definitely a modernization that I've been wanting for the 2D entries for quite some time, and it being in the first 3D entry in the series feels appropriate since it's a different format and in many ways an evolution of the series. It makes it feel more modern. That was one thing I liked about Mario Odyssey. Is like, okay, it's good. We're done with lives. That's fine. They didn't serve much of a gameplay purpose, and now we can use the coins for something else. That's just a good way to go. Forgotten Land also has co-op included, in which you can control the wondrous Bandana Waddle Dee, who has his own spear moveset, which is very cool. There's no other way to play as spears, just Bandana Waddle Dee as the co-op player. Maybe it would have been nice if you could unlock Spear in single player as well, but as is, that's still very fun. The Overworld Map is another major addition, and it feels like a refinement and an expansion of the Far-Flung Heroes area from Kirby Star Allies. I really like how you are rewarded for exploring different parts of the map, and you can find different challenge levels or just coins. Just a very good way of having a world map. I think this is a great way to do it. The 3D perspective allows for areas to be a lot more open than they were in some of the 2D games, but they never feel too open. You are kept on a fairly guided path throughout the levels. I think there are probably too many invisible walls, but that does prevent people from falling off. Maybe they could have had less invisible walls in wild mode or something. I don't know. It did feel a little excessive when you see that clearly you should spatially be able to jump over a wall, but you just can't because the game has an invisible wall. But they're also understandable in helping to funnel players down the correct path. The warp stars function as ways to segment the different parts of the levels, which reminded me a lot of Super Mario Galaxy. I actually pointed this out in a previous video that I thought that's how warp stars might work, and turns out I was right yet again. Wow. Just the variety in the environments is also really excellent. Even within levels in the same world, you get a lot of different kinds of environments. I think they are paced really well, and they feel pretty lengthy the first time around when you're exploring for everything. And it feels like that time is used well. It doesn't feel like it's padded out. There is value to the time you spend in the levels. The aesthetic of some of the levels is just really amazing and some of the best we've ever seen in the series. Some of the ones that really stuck out to me were the horror alien theme park, which has this sort of blacklight neon look, which just is amazing and has a fantastic music track. The amusement park in general, Windaria Park it's called, is one of the standouts. It's a really unique theme and it's executed pretty much impeccably. The snow level is sort of inspired by London, England, and features Big Ben and some other clock towers, as well as a more classical type of architecture. That was a really interesting and fun theme to go with for a winter level that makes it feel really unique in the series. I also liked how the first level of the desert area was more open than most others. You were given free rein to explore that environment, which was a nice way to open up that new world. One of the cutest things to ever be in a Kirby game is the side mission in the first level of the amusement park zone, in which you gather up some ducklings and return them to their mother, which is just really cute and a fun detail, and it adds a lot of character to the world. This is like just a minor detail, but it does add a lot to the minutia of the gameplay, and that is the objects that are strewn across the world that you can kick, and they sometimes give you coins, and you can also inhale them. Mostly though, you just kick them, and it just offers that little extra interactivity. And it reminded me of Luigi's Mansion 3, how there are just tons of objects, and it's just so much fun to push them around. Just the attention to detail in the environments as well reminded me of Luigi's Mansion 3. The levels themselves have lots of replay value, thanks in part to the collectibles that are contained within them. The environments are really detailed, and a lot of them are very explorable, and there's little nooks and crannies to get into. The different hidden caged Waddle Dees, which have been imprisoned there by the Beast Pack, and they're these games equivalent to energy spheres. It's so nice going to a game with tons of collectibles after Star Allies, which stripped back the amount of collectibles per level, which was super disappointing. And it also makes the collectibles feel worthwhile to get, because the puzzles in Star Allies to get them were pretty simplified, which was always a shame. And here they are really well thought out a lot of the time, and very enjoyable to collect. And it's not just the Waddle Dees, you also have the figurine capsules. You know, there's always an incentive to get more of those, to potentially get one you don't have already, and it saves you money at the machine. You don't have to pay at the machine to get them. One of the more major collectibles are blueprints, which can be found in levels. After you've unlocked these, you take them to the Waddle Dee shop, which unlocks the option to upgrade a specified ability. Having these blueprints in the levels was really nice, as it was exciting to know that once you got back to town, you'd have a new version of an ability to mess around with. It's also an incentive to play the Treasure Road levels as well as collect coins, as currency is required, as well as the star collectibles that are obtained through completion of Treasure Road stages. And then you have the achievement list, which rewards you with more Waddle Dees. Those specifically can be tricky at times, a few of them, to figure out what exactly you are meant to do within the level. I think it helps you to really methodically go through with which I think is the best way to play the game, is to go through the levels methodically. Like, you could rush through them and be done with the game fairly quickly, but I think you have a much better experience if you search around for collectibles. So you got those achievements, but then there's also the star things, you know, those star things that you get at the end of challenge levels, and those can be used to upgrade copy abilities, which is a valuable thing to do. I feel like the balance has really been struck here, where they have a really satisfying amount of collectibles, and it never feels like overwhelming. Most of these are largely unnecessary for completion of the main game, except for you have to collect a certain amount of Waddle Dees to access the boss of each world, but you'll probably be able to do that without too much effort. So most of it is just extra stuff to do, which is awesome because I really love replaying Kirby levels, and being given explicit reasons to do so is very welcome. The figurines are a fun continuation of the idea of keychains, which was introduced in Kirby Triple Deluxe and continued on in Kirby Planet Robobot with stickers, and then in Star Allies with the puzzle pieces. I think this is the most in-depth version of that, and it essentially functions as a model viewer like we've had in Super Smash Bros., except the new one. We haven't had that many model viewers in Kirby's past. I think the one that is coming to mind for me is the one in Kirby and the Rainbow Curse, which is a really excellent model viewer, and it has a clay scene behind it. It looks like a clay workshop, which is really fun. And there's a lot of different ones to collect. There's 4 different categories of rarity and like value, and get a very comprehensive collection of all the different objects and enemies that are in the game. It's fun to look at them, and Kirby is in the background always just ominously staring at the figure as you circle around it with the camera, which is a pretty hilarious detail. Glad they did that. Very inspired there. And there's quite a lot to collect, so you are incentivized in the levels to find them whenever you can. Buying them with coins does tend to feel worthwhile, and you get new ones at a pretty good rate from the gotcha machines, as they are called, gotcha machines. And another great quality of life feature is that in the post game you can trade the star collectibles for figurines that you don't have with a specific trader Waddle Dee, which is good because that helps you finish up your collection more easily. That's appreciated by me and presumably others too. Treasure Roads are this game's challenge levels. You unlock quite a few of these throughout the game, and they are accessed through the world map. I like how you can find them by searching throughout the map and pressing A on a specified spot. I think that's fun. And these stages are really well designed. They tend to have a pretty strict time limit, which keeps you moving. And while the level designs are less organic, that allows them to be more focused than the main levels. Each of them focuses on one single ability, or Mouthful Mode, which allows the developers to come up with some fun ideas for ways to utilize those abilities in challenging and fun ways. They're a nice change of pace from the main levels, and I am really pleased with their inclusion. I think the camera in this game is very well implemented. Even though it is largely automated, it never feels restrictive, and that's because it frames the action very well and is dynamic in several instances, and you don't really even think about it most of the time, which is a good thing because you want to be focused on the gameplay, and the camera just facilitates that subconsciously. Well done there. In terms of difficulty, I think this is a really well-balanced game, and it does give a lot of initiative to the player to decide how difficult they want the game to be, which I think is good. The people playing Kirby games have a varying degree of skill levels, and so offering these options is really wonderful and something that should be a series standard, I think. In terms of specifics, there are some optional items like the health, speed, and power upgrades, which will make the game easier if you want them, and they're totally not needed at all for completion of the main game, though I do think you need to buy a certain amount of items from the shop just to unlock a special figurine, but you don't have to use them even though you have them. There's also the optional difficulty modes. This is the first Kirby game with difficulty modes. I think maybe there could be more, but what we have in this title feels sufficient. We have the Spring Breeze mode, which is the easy mode, which I don't know how easy it is because I didn't play it. I just didn't feel the need to do that. And then we have the Wild mode, which is the harder mode, even though, you know, it's still reasonably easy for most players of a decent skill level. These different options that are provided to the player allow for the game itself to be more difficult if you do not take advantage of these optional upgrades. Some of the upgraded abilities are a bit more broken than others. Specifically, the Morpho-Knight ability can heal itself and is just really super powerful. So I actually didn't use that one in the end game challenge, this game's equivalent of the True Arena, because I wanted a more pure experience. But yeah, I mean, it's totally up to you what level of difficulty you want the game to be. To a certain extent, of course, there's limits to that. There's only so hard that they're gonna make it. It is, after all, a Kirby game, so the difficulty level is never going to get excessive. And also on a level-by-level basis, I think this is one of the most difficult Kirby games just to get through if you're not taking advantage of those options that the game does give you. That's great, because I want my Kirby games to be just a little more challenging. Not too much, just having a slightly more challenging experience is valuable to me because it makes it more engaging. I think it's implemented really, really well. One thing that is a bit disappointing is the lack of mid-bosses. There's only 4 total in this whole game. They are pretty good, obviously, you know, they're not bad, but there's just the 4. And usually in the post-game, those mid-bosses would get different color variants, which would have more obviously different attacks. I think the mid-bosses do get new attacks in the post-game, maybe, but their designs do not change at all, which feels like a missed opportunity. Yeah, the mid-bosses do feel more repetitive than other games just because there's so few of them. There's one specific area where other Kirby games are superior. A major highlight of Forgotten Land is the various different bosses. I think these are executed super well. There's very few that I would describe as super brain-dead easy, the same way that I could describe some of these Star Allies bosses. Most people are going to play that game with 3 different AI or player-controlled helpers, and that makes the game super easy. Specifically, the bosses just go down so fast. So it's really refreshing to play a title in the Kirby series where the bosses, you actually put some thought into them, and they're really well presented, and you have these really grand arenas that you do battle in. As the game progresses, the boss battles get more and more elaborate. I think the only boss in the main game that I thought was a bit too easy was maybe Tropic Woods, but other than that, like, even the boss of the first world I thought was pretty well balanced. Some crazy stuff happens, especially some of the post-game bosses are pretty gnarly, actually. There can be a lot of stuff to keep track of on screen, and it's just cool. The final battle of the game is actually quite difficult, but not excessively so, that's perfect. The game does still have amiibo support. Most modern Kirby titles do include amiibo support, and Forgotten Land is no different. It is fairly basic, as it was in Star Allies, where it basically just only grants health items and coins, which isn't the most exciting, but it is nice that it's there, and it does reward you for hanging on to your Kirby amiibo. It is cool that the QB amiibo, which is still exorbitantly expensive and impossible to get for anyone who didn't get it when it was released, is still compatible. Great to see more games compatible with the QB amiibo. Yeah. How about you reprint that maybe sometime, guys? I don't know. I think the design of the new characters in this game are really strong. I like the new Beast Pack characters a lot, specifically Silly Dillo. What a fun character. He's just funny. They're all great, and they fit in well with the series, but offer their own identity. Well, I think it's about time we talked about Elfilin, who is one of the best companion characters in the series, I'd say. He's truly a delightful critter that accompanies you on your quest. I was really pleased with how they integrated Elfilin into the story, and I really like his little suggestions and commentary as you are progressing through the levels and going around the Waddle Dee hub. It's a fun addition. So there was this big movement online that was like, oh, this character is going to be the final boss, and he's going to be very evil and horrifying. I thought, no. HAL's not going to do that. because that would be too obvious. If there's one thing that HAL Laboratory it is good at, it is delivering narratives that the fan base does not actually expect. They always have a new twist on it. I thought, no, they've done that 2 times already with Marks, and then they kind of did a bit of a retread with Magalore, but it was in a different context, and it was throughout the entire game that betrayal went down. But with Elfilin, I was like, nah, this guy, he's gonna be your bud forever. And look who was right, this guy, haha. All you memers online trying to predict HAL Laboratory, nah, you don't know nothing. You think you know how it's gonna go down, but you don't. I just wanted to gloat that I was indeed right. Yeah, and just a very cute design. I like this animal here. Very good animal there. It's very awesome how the fictional language in the game that is present on signage and such is like actually decipherable. It's all remixed English text that's been rotated around and remixed into the style of this game, and it's fun that they did that, and it makes the world feel more real. Just a fun detail. Let's just touch on the ending for a moment, because it's pretty insane. It has like some of the most legitimately creepy and actually unsettling imagery that has ever been seen in a Kirby game, and I'm really in favor of that. The whole game seems to be going for a more serious tone in general, having that really be amped up by just how sinister the final boss is really effective. It's actually very gross looking. That's something that we tend to get out of Kirby final bosses, but they just like really did go for it, and I really commend that. It makes the title stand out. The blob form specifically is really probably the scariest Kirby boss ever. This is like one of the only modern Kirby bosses that I would rank up there with Zero and Zero 2 in terms of just creepy and disturbed imagery. The fetal form is like so gross looking. It's really horrible. I feel like in modern titles they haven't gone as far. Like Planet Robobot didn't have as much of that specific imagery that's meant to be unsettling, and Star Allies did a bit, but it was more abstract. Like it was just a blob basically. Still creepy, but it was not nearly on this level. So it's been a while since we've had something that was quite this freaky. The blob, where it like consumes the different animals in the beast pack and they just form into this like horrible creature. It looks like a kid's cartoon version of the Thing, and it chases you. It was legitimately shocking. Yeah, wow. And the final form looks good too. It's the eyes are really striking and creepy looking. Yeah, so the design of that works really well. I love how you finally end up defeating the final boss is by using Mouthful Mode on a big rig truck, which is really funny, and it did help to undercut the tension just a little bit, and it keeps the stakes high, but there's that dash of really charming humor in there as well. This was very, very crazy to experience, but this game has proper voice acting, which is insane. Like just straight up English dialogue in a Kirby game. It felt very, very strange the first time through. It definitely fits what they're going for. In terms of the context of the story, it makes sense, but I am a fan of that. And I like the way that they repeat that voice line in the creepy sections later in the game. It's pretty funny and like unsettling. Very cool that they did that. And it does kind of make sense because we do have voice acting in the form of the song at the beginning of the game, and we're just getting a full-on like dialogue in the end of the game. And obviously that's different because it's music, it's not a real language, but still, I guess it does kind of set up the fact that this is like a somewhat human society. Crazy stuff. Was not expecting that at all. I did not think that would ever happen, because I gotta bring it up. It is funny though that a Kirby game has proper English voice acting before a Pokemon game. Yeah, isn't that funny? I definitely was expecting a bit more of an explicit explanation for the world itself and how it came to be in the state it is, but I do appreciate the more interpretable way they went. You do still get the basic questions answered, like, yeah, they were a society of people, advanced people. They found the alien Elfilin, and they like harnessed its dimension hopping abilities, and then they yeeted themselves on out of there and left the land to be overtaken by nature. Yeah, interesting stuff there. I don't know. I guess I was expecting a little more explicit information on that, but not having that is also fine. One thing that is interesting about this title is that it is the first main series game in a long time to not feature pause screen descriptions or moveset lists. So it's a more standardized pause screen. If you think of like a Mario game or something, it'll just have a normal pause screen that you go to, and that's good. This is a change that overall I like and I think works for this game and makes it feel more fresh. For one, it adds to the feeling of discovery. It also increases the value of the figurines that you can collect, because the figurines have descriptions, which are essentially this game's equivalent of those classic pause screen descriptions, which have all the lore dumps and little tidbits of info that we've come to know and love. So those are still in the game. They're just contained in a different context, and it's one which I think fits very well. It also helps with the pacing of the battles, because usually what I would do in Kirby games when I was playing it for the first time is I would go into a battle and immediately pause so that I could read the info, and then, you know, that takes like at least 30 seconds or so, and then you unpause and then you start the battle, which is, in terms of pacing, is a little bit awkward, so I think that does make sense, especially for this game in which boss fights are actually a really important part of it. One of the advantages to not having moveset lists visible on the pause screen menu is that it helps to increase the sense of discovery. Usually in a new Kirby game, I would pause immediately after getting a new ability to scroll through to see what the different moves are, but in Forgotten Land, that's not an option, so you have to organically find out what the ability is capable of. This also goes for Kirby's main moveset. I'm sure some people would really prefer there to be a complete list of the ability's different moves, but personally I am fine with this direction as it makes the game more engaging to me. Also has really huge lore implications for the series. Not nearly as much as Void Termina in Star Allies, but still a lot is going on here. Specifically with the connections to Kirby's Return to Dreamland and Magolor, the lore Star Cutter, and sort of the concept in general of the Ancients and that warping technology that is used by Fecto Elfilin. That creature seems to be a large role in the overall Kirby universe in terms of its development of the ancient technology. It sort of hints at the Ancients were possibly like literally humans or a human-like species. You never see exactly what the inhabitants of the Forgotten Land looked like before they left on their multi-dimensional adventures or whatever the hell they were doing, and I think that's a good thing. It makes it engaging to discuss. There's definitely stuff going on there that we don't get a full picture of, but we can kind of infer. Having an incomplete picture of what is going on completely with the lore makes it really compelling, invites you to sort of dive into it and come to your own conclusions about what specifically is happening and the history of this universe. It's really well done, and this is one of the best instances of it. The game does have HAL Rooms. As of now, I've found one of them. I did kind of see it online somewhere, I think, how to get it, but it's actually probably the best HAL Room. It's really great. It has an exclusive music track, really well done, and the environment itself was actually quite stunning and beautiful. The process of unlocking it felt appropriate. It's not something you would probably find just normally. You kind of have to be hunting for secrets in order to find it. That's as HAL Rooms should be. They should be fairly difficult to come across. I was really pleased to see how extensive the post-game was. I also really loved how integrated it was into the story. In terms of the content itself, it's a bit of a combination of Meta Nightmare and Heroes in Another Dimension in terms of the multitude of collectibles. So basically the format is that you revisit stages from the main game, but they're slightly remixed in more difficult versions with more difficult bosses. And that's pretty standard for the series. That's been a thing usually in the form of Meta Nightmare or something like DDD Tour, guest star mode in Star Allies. This time you do just play as Kirby, and it's a part of the story in which you are finding the souls of Leon the Lion, who was the Beast Pack leader, and he got imprisoned in some like alternate dimension, and his soul got scattered across these different levels, so you gotta collect them. In that way it's similar to Heroes in Another Dimension, because that mode mode had you collecting a bunch of different parts. So it reminded me of that. Great music in these levels, and the Phantom versions of the bosses are really great. They fix some of the issues I had with Phantom Tropic Woods, for example, is a lot more difficult than the regular version, which I appreciated. And then it has a pretty great finale with Morphinite showing up yet again, which was unexpected. I really like the music track for Morphinite. I think I prefer it to the original one from Star Allies. I do have a few complaints about the ending of this mode. I think the music track they use in the cutscene at the end of the Phantom Isles, it sounds like something that would sound pretty incredible if it were orchestrated, but it's just not, and it sounds pretty good, but it's just not at the level that it should be, and I'm not getting as much from it emotionally because it's so obviously synthetic sounding. So that was a minor complaint, and it is a little repetitive to have Morphinite again in this pretty similar manner that he was included in the previous main series title. That being said, he is a really cool character, so I don't really mind that much. It's better than having Galactonite again, who we've definitely had a few too many times at this point. You know, it felt reasonably natural, and they incorporate Morphinite into the final battle in the arena. Morphinite's like essence is sort of combined with Elfilin to make Chaos Elfilin. It's kind of crazy, actually. So, you know, in terms of the lore and stuff, it does check out, but it is a little, you know, it's a little repetitive, but I don't mind too much. The other complaint I have is that I think the Morphinite ability is probably unlocked a bit too early here. You unlock it after defeating Morphinite, and I do feel like it probably would have been a bit better to have that unlocked after completing the arena fully, because I think it's a bit too overpowered to unlock before the final version of the arena. But it's not too bad because you don't have to use it, and I didn't because I wanted the more pure experience. I wanted that raw difficulty that the true arena is known for, and I did get it with not using any of the helper items that the game does throw at you and you can choose to ignore. That is a really cool ability though. That's a nice bonus. I love that the arena is unlocked before you complete the main story because that makes it feel like more of an integrated part of the experience. I also really enjoy the multiple different tournaments. I think this is a better method than the difficulty slider in Kirby Star Allies. It's definitely not the hardest iteration of the arena, and it's very exploitable with the different power-up items, etc. And you can also use coins to continue if you die in the arena, which is a pretty major addition. I didn't ever do this because I guess I just have that gamer pride where I have to do it all in one go, like the classic titles, but obviously there's no specific need to do that. I don't really mind the arena being somewhat easier than previous titles since the overall difficulty of the game is slightly higher than usual. There's less of a need for there to be such a giant late game challenge. It's just not as necessary for the experience. One really good addition to the arena is the fact that you now get rewarded with stars for completing the different arenas, which is good and incentivizes you to replay the arenas, which isn't something we've had as much before other than getting a better time. Very good change there. A major disappointment, I hate to say, is that this game does not have a Kirby Dance upon 100% completion being reached, which for a time was a series standard. I guess Star Allies didn't have that, as I recall, which was lame then, and it's lame now that when you get 100% completion, you get a nice screen which says 100% cleared, and that's good, but there's no Kirby Dance. I miss that. They should have that, especially because they have a movie theater in the game, and I was kind of expecting maybe a few more bonus cutscenes like Kirby Superstar had outtakes. I don't know if I was expecting that specifically, but I was kind of expecting a little more in terms of something more exclusive to the movie theater that you don't encounter elsewhere in the game, because as far as I know, it's just the basic credits that you can get that is unlocked at the beginning of the game that is always accessible from the movie theater, which is separate from the standard credits that you get from beating the game. It would have been nice to have a bit more theater exclusive content, specifically that 100% dance, which we are missing, and that is a bit of a blemish on the game, not gonna lie. I do miss that. Pretty sad. Okay, I have talked about just about everything I could think of in relation to Kirby and the Forgotten Land. It's pretty amazing I guess I spoiled it, but also I would recommend it. If you have tried the 2D games in the past and it didn't click with you, I'd say maybe give this a shot, because it is a very different format and it might have something that appeals to you more. For fans of the series, I mean, I'm sure you've already played it. Dang, I just was not anticipating this game being this good. I had a feeling that HAL Laboratory was working on a major project because, you know, they made that clear before release, is that they were working on something major for the series. I really was not anticipating the level of quality that their first 3D attempt would be. I guess just the long build-up to it probably helps. They've been toying with different mechanics in spin-off games and in sub-games, and I guess that all just culminated in this first proper effort, just nailing so many different things. HAL Laboratory has really proven themselves as very competent and talented developers in the past, but Forgotten Land shows what they are capable of when they take the time on a project and really try and push the series forward. It can be amazing, as this game demonstrates. I'm very pleased to have played it. It was a marvelous, magical time. It brought me great joy, and selling super well. Nintendo released their financial info for the quarter or whatever. It said Forgotten Land has already sold, I think, 2.5 million copies just in the first 2 weeks of its release. So presumably it's sold more since then, which is excellent. And it's already the third best-selling game in the series, and I think it'll probably surpass Star Allies and, fingers crossed, the original Kirby's Dream Land, which is still the highest-selling Kirby title, which I think is a bit of a shame. The series ought to sell more. So I'm just ecstatic to see it getting an entry of this quality that is so new and fresh, and that is connecting with so many different types of people, reviewing so well, and a lot of people seem to be really enjoying it. That's just perfect. That's just that's what we want in the world, is to spread the Kirby propaganda to the masses, get them all indoctrinated. That's the end goal. So this was a good step in that process. A truly wonderful celebration of the 30th anniversary of the series. I couldn't think of a better one. Having such a excellent new game that expands the scope of what a Kirby game can be for the 30th anniversary of the series, that's pretty perfect. Well, that was quite the experience, wouldn't you say? I've delved into and dissected many different aspects of this title. Thanks for tuning in to this mega review. I had fun making it. Hope you had fun watching it. More Kirby videos in the future. I have a few different things planned, so hopefully those end up on the channel soon enough. Hey there, buddies. Just thought I'd mention, now that the review is over, that I made a stop-motion short film, which is uploaded on my other channel. It's 4 minutes long. I spent a long time on it, and I've been told it's funny. So if it looks like something you might enjoy, check it out. It's called The Journey of Gregory. So go look at that maybe if you want to watch a cool and fun video that will change your life for the better.